Hello and thanks for joining us. The top stories this afternoon. As most states start to reopen, officials say it's still important to maintain social distancing measures going forward. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro details President Trump's plan for economic recovery. Part of it is bringing critical manufacturing back home. The Chinese video sharing app TikTok is causing concern among U.S. lawmakers. They say it could expose sensitive government data to the Chinese Communist Party. And many children are falling ill in China after eating fake baby formula. They've been diagnosed with rickets, a softening and weakening of bones in children. Nearly every state in the country has now partially reopened, but officials are asking people to continue social distancing until a vaccine is developed.
President Trump returning to the White House Sunday afternoon from meetings at Camp David, where he said the coronavirus fight was on the agenda.
It was a working weekend. It was a good weekend. A lot of very good things have happened.
With 48 states now making reopening moves like reopening parks, beaches, and businesses, governors like Ohio's Mike DeWine face new challenges.
We are opening back up because we have to open back up. But at the same time, that creates more exposure.
Leaders across the country are asking for partners in progress. Mayor Bill de Blasio says the timeline for New York City's eventual reopening is up to New Yorkers.
Keep buckling down on the social distancing, on the shelter in place, on using the face coverings, all these things. It's literally a direct line between what you do and our ability to reopen anything.
Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar says developing a coronavirus vaccine is a top Trump administration priority. But until then,
we look for spikes and early indicators. We surge we have adequate testing capacity. We surge that in. We need to make sure anybody who's symptomatic is tested and that we have adequate asymptomatic surveillance in areas of greatest burden.
As of Sunday afternoon, the U.S. has more than 1.4 million confirmed coronavirus cases per a Johns Hopkins University count.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo got tested live during his daily news conference this weekend. He wants to encourage residents to do the same.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo got tested for the CCP virus live on Sunday during his televised daily news conference. It was meant as a demonstration to encourage state residents to do the same. Cuomo says there are now 700 test sites in New York and that the state is far ahead of others.
Per capita, we are doing more than other countries, significantly more. Diagnostic tests by population, New York is 7.1, Italy is second, 4.9, Canada, USA nationally is doing 3.3. We're double the national average.
In late April, a screening test showed that 14% of residents tested positive for CCP virus antibodies. Cuomo also expressed concern of the mental health of people struggling under stay-at-home restrictions. He urges people to communicate with family members and to probe their mental states.
How are you? I'm okay. How are you? You know, pretty much all right, getting by. Yeah, forget that answer. How are you really means let's get to a different depth in the question and a different depth in the answer.
New York has accounted for 1/3 of the nearly 90,000 Americans who have died from the CCP virus. Cuomo says he'll soon share his test results with everyone.
I'm not here tomorrow. It means I tested positive. Otherwise, I'll see you here tomorrow.
The essence of President Trump's economic recovery plan is Buy American, Deregulate and Innovate. White House trade advisor Peter Navarro said yesterday he'll use powers like the Defense Production Act to bring manufacturing home and reduce reliance on China. Pharmaceuticals and medical supplies are top of the list.
White House trade advisor Peter Navarro spoke on Sunday about President Trump's plans to bring back America's economy. Coordinator of the Defense Production Act, or DPA, he said the aim is to buy American, deregulate, and innovate. Speaking to NBC's Meet the Press and ABC's This Week, Navarro said the president's administration plans to bring key supply chains back to the U.S. The CCP virus pandemic has raised concerns about U.S. dependence on China for pharmaceuticals and medical equipment. Navarro said the plan would resolve this issue, using things like the DPA and other private sector enterprises to bring these supply chains home. He said it would also bring the benefit of creating manufacturing jobs for American workers who have been laid off due to the crisis. Speaking about the economy, Navarro said, this president built up the most beautiful economy in 3.5 years, and the Chinese Communist Party crippled that in 30 days. He said that the Buy American agenda will also help protect national security.
A new bipartisan proposal wants to bar federal employees from using social media app TikTok. It's made by a Chinese developer and has an estimated 800 million users worldwide, but two members of Congress who introduced the proposal say it could be used to spy on government officials.
U.S. Representatives Ken Buck and Lou Correa are addressing security threats posed by the Chinese video sharing app TikTok. Their House bill would prevent all federal employees from downloading and using TikTok on government-issued phones. It also covers other apps created by TikTok's parent company ByteDance. In a statement, Buck wrote, TikTok is a Chinese-owned company and is required by law to share whatever information the Chinese Communist Party wants whenever it wants. He wrote that, therefore, TikTok is a cybersecurity threat to our country. He called apps such as this one parasitic software that is able to collect data from United States government officials. Correa said it's critical to ban the use of the app on government devices to keep networks secure. Since 2017, under China's national intelligence law, the regime in Beijing can access all data stored within its national borders. Others have already voiced concern about the app. Several U.S. government agencies, including the Pentagon and the Departments of State and Homeland Security, barred employees from using TikTok over security concerns. The app is extremely popular inside and outside of China, with an estimate of more than 800 million active users worldwide. TikTok, also known as Douyin in China, was launched by ByteDance in 2016.
At least 11 firefighters are injured after a massive blaze in downtown Los Angeles over the weekend.
The Los Angeles Fire Department says 4 of the injured firefighters have been admitted into the burn ICU. Officials with LAFD say it was responding to a fire at a one-story structure at 6:30 Saturday evening. Then something exploded. The fire expanded to multiple buildings. The department had upgraded it to a major emergency. More than 230 responders were called to the scene to help. Preliminary reports show the fire happened at a business warehouse that serves suppliers for makers of butane honey oil. The department says it has set up a medical branch for the injured firefighters. All are expected to survive.
The National Hurricane Center upgraded a tropical depression into Tropical Storm Arthur over the weekend. Rain and rough surf are forecast for North Carolina coast as the storm passes this afternoon. Arthur is bringing bad weather to eastern North Carolina and southeast Virginia. A tropical storm warning is now in effect for parts of the North Carolina coast, not long after the Outer Banks reopened its beaches over the weekend. This marks the 6th consecutive year that a named storm has formed earlier than June 1st, the official start to hurricane season in the Atlantic. And trade tensions are rising between Canberra and Beijing and have been since Australia called for an international inquiry into the origins of the virus.
Australia is urging China to engage in discussions to ease trade tensions after Canberra called for an international inquiry into the origins of the new coronavirus. China, accusing Australia of playing petty tricks, recently suspended beef imports from 4 of Australia's largest meat processors and is considering imposing hefty tariffs on barley. In an interview on Sunday, Australia's Trade Minister Simon Birmingham said he had asked for talks with his Chinese counterpart.
Now that request has not been met, with the call being accommodated at this stage.
He said Australia was open to having that discussion, but also reserves its rights to bring a case against China at the World Trade Organization if Beijing imposes tariffs on Australian barley. Relations have been strained between Canberra and Beijing amid Australian accusations of Chinese meddling in domestic affairs and concern about what Australia sees as China's growing influence in the Pacific region. Australia insists that its call for a coronavirus inquiry, coming alongside US criticism of China's handling of the outbreak, is not politically targeted at Beijing.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu presented his new unity government to Parliament on Sunday, ending more than a year of political deadlock, but he's still facing a trial for alleged corruption. That starts in a week.
Israel's parliament approved on Sunday Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's new unity government, ending more than a year of political deadlock after 3 inconclusive elections.
An absolute majority of the public welcomes the unity government. The public wanted a unity government, and this is what the public got today.
His power-sharing agreement with former election rival centrist blue and white leader Benny Gantz opens the way for right-wing Netanyahu to proceed towards a pledged de facto annexation of parts of the occupied West Bank, land Palestinians seek for a state. Under the accord with Gantz, Netanyahu will remain Prime Minister for 18 months before handing over to his new partner. Gantz, a former armed forces chief, will be Netanyahu's defense minister and alternate Prime Minister, a new position that Netanyahu will hold when Gantz is in charge. Netanyahu is still facing a trial starting in a week on charges of bribery, breach of trust and fraud, which he denies. By assuming the alternate premiership once he hands over to Gantz, Netanyahu hopes to avoid having to resign from the government under legal rules that allow a prime minister to remain in office, even if charged with a crime.
And coming up, incredible scenes in Hong Kong's legislature after control of a key committee was seized by pro-Beijing officials. Find out more about what started it when we return.
How do we get to this point? Back in December, the coronavirus was already spreading in Wuhan, and the Chinese Communist Party was covering it up and punishing the whistleblowers who dared to report the truth. Their actions led to this pandemic, which now has us, in America, stuck in our homes and losing our jobs. To this very day, the Communist Party is still lying, making it more critical than ever for us to get honest reporting about China. The Epoch Times is able to bring you the uncensored truth because we maintain a network of underground sources inside of China, hidden from the censors of the communist government. For instance, our investigative team has been contacting individual funeral homes, hospitals, and they've obtained leaked internal documents which show that China's official numbers are massively underreported by a factor of at least 10. If you're looking for an honest source of news that can keep you informed and safe, check out The Epoch Times. Go to readepoch.com and try your first month for just $1 and get real journalism delivered straight to your doorstep.
Hong Kong's legislature plunged into chaotic scuffles for the second time this month. The dispute is over a bill that would criminalize those who are deemed to be disrespecting the Chinese national anthem by sitting down or turning their back.
Pro-democracy legislators charged at security guards surrounding a pro-Beijing lawmaker who had taken the chairman's seat in the meeting. It's the second time in 10 days that legislators have pushed and shoved each other over the procedures of electing a chairperson.
The reality in Hong Kong today is that whenever Beijing, whenever Carrie Lam and the pro-establishment don't like something, they will do whatever it takes, including breaking the system that we have, the rules that we have.
The House committee has built up a backlog after failing to elect a chairperson since last year. The backlog includes the China National Anthem bill. Hong Kong politician Nathan Law said in the public hearing that the China National Anthem bill does not protect the people of Hong Kong.
Such a law is not to protect people's freedom, but the brutal regime that constantly exploits its own people. The so-called protecting the symbol of the nation is actually to protect the self-esteem of the Chinese communist regime.
Last May, scuffles broke out in the legislature over a proposed extradition bill. If passed, it could have seen people stand trial in courts in mainland China. The bill sparked months of pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong and was later scrapped. The China National Anthem bill is expected to be given a second reading on May 27th, despite the procedural chaos. Protesters have been calling on social media for citywide demonstrations on that day.
Multiple children have fallen ill in central China after they were fed fake baby formula. It's the latest in a series of cases involving tainted baby food.
Several children in China were sickened after being fed a protein drink sold as baby formula. The reports came from Chenzhou City in Hunan Province. According to Hunan TV, the children's heads began to deform after being fed a product called Bei'an Min. It's passed off as infant milk and sold to parents. The children developed eczema and lost weight. Some would repeatedly slap their heads uncontrollably. They were diagnosed with rickets, a softening and weakening of bones in children caused by malnutrition. It's unclear how long they were given the formula. One parent told Hunan TV when she bought the product, she noticed it had a protein drink label. But store clerks told her it was another name for baby formula. After being contacted by the media, the manufacturer said that the product had been discontinued, adding that it met quality standards for protein drinks. Local authorities are investigating. This is the second series of cases of formula-caused sickness in the same city within 1 year. In late March, at least 10 parents wrote a joint letter requesting an investigation. Their children's heads also became deformed after being fed a protein drink called Shuar Thai. The parents purchased the drink after it was recommended by doctors from a local children's hospital. Later, city authorities announced the doctors in question had been suspended for a year. They also said the affected children will be given health checks and the families will be compensated. But on Thursday, several parents told Beijing News that they hadn't received compensation and that no health checks were performed.
Why do cases like this keep happening after repeatedly being banned? The reason is simple. The so-called supervision is just a formality. For the perpetrators, after paying some money, everything is okay for them.
The reports come 12 years after China's tainted milk scandal, where massive amounts of milk powder were laced with melamine. The tainted milk powder killed half a dozen children and poisoned hundreds of thousands of others. Multiple top officials who were deemed responsible for the scandal were punished, but several of them were later reappointed to new positions. Among them was China's former head of the Food Safety Department. 6 years later, he became the director for drug safety. On his watch, an ongoing problem at the time, the production of substandard vaccines escalated, becoming the country's worst health crisis in years. Another of the officials, the former director of the National Quality Inspection Office, later became the National Deputy for Fighting Pornography and Illegal Publications. An investigation by Beijing News showed that between 2008 and 2014, 1/3 of the officials disciplined in various scandals were later given new posts. On the other hand, the father of a girl sickened by tainted milk was accused of blackmailing and jailed for 5 years. His daughter developed kidney stones from the laced milk. He campaigned for compensation from the formula maker, but the company sued him for extortion instead. Jiang Yalin's daughter also got kidney stones because of the contaminated milk.
Disasters happen again and again. The most important reason is that the perpetrators didn't receive severe punishment by the law, while the victims have not received fair and reasonable compensation.
Both Jiang and He say if the system doesn't change, cases like these will continue to happen.
Coming up, an EU official wants to freeze Chinese takeovers of European companies, while the UK Parliament gets a high-tech makeover. That and more as we head over to London after the break.
"90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board."
Viewers have described China Uncensored like The Daily Show, but about China.
At the beginning, I was super excited when I got 500 views, and now the show's grown to about 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. One episode reached 7.9 million people. I'm a little freaked out that that many people have seen my face. In 5 years, I see China Uncensored as the sole source of edutainment worldwide.
Now we head over to the UK with NTD's Neil Woodrow. A member of the European Parliament wants to put an end to what he calls the Chinese shopping tour. And Londoners are spending tens of millions on bicycles in what's shaping up to be a mini cycling boom.
Hello and welcome to NTD UK, bringing you UK and Euro news. I'm Neil Woodrow. A top EU official is pushing for a 12-month ban on Chinese takeovers in Europe. German EU Parliament member Manfred Weber wants to put an end to the, quote, Chinese shopping tour. Because of the CCP virus crisis, Chinese companies are increasingly trying to buy up European companies that are currently undervalued or facing economic difficulties. Weber said on Sunday he views China as a strategic competitor for Europe and an authoritarian model of society that wants to expand its power and replace the United States as a leading power. He says Europe should take China seriously, but warned his fellow politicians to above all be vigilant. Weber is the leader of the European Parliament's largest political alliance. After the US and the EU, Britain is now talking with Swiss drug maker Roche to buy up their new CCP virus antibody test in bulk. An antibody test can detect if a person has already had the virus and since recovered. Public Health England verified the reliability of the test in the UK's top specialist lab. The lab at Porton Down provides sensitive scientific services to the UK government. Roche says it can produce hundreds of thousands of tests per week for the UK. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson said the test could be a game changer. And the UK Parliament's House of Commons has had a technology overhaul. The historic debating chamber has been retrofitted into a modern conferencing hub, so it can now function in accordance with social distancing.
Recent events have forced the centuries-old House of Commons to take a leap into the future. Matthew Hamlin is the head of the chamber business team and had just 2 weeks to perform the upgrade.
We've created a new way of managing business. We have published lists of speakers now, which we didn't used to have, which are there because everyone needs to know when they're being queued in by the broadcast team. It's like a giant TV studio.
The benches are no longer filled with rowdy politicians waving papers and voicing support for their leaders. Now flat-screen televisions beam choreographed questions into a near-silent chamber. The new-look chamber has seen several largely successful hybrid government sessions.
Some members of Parliament are calling for a full return to the building itself, but others are standing firm. They say it's not yet safe and want the virtual system to continue. The European Union is pushing to reopen internal borders and restart travel. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas on Saturday said Germany would stop border controls with Denmark in the next few days. And from June 15th, there will be no more checks at the borders with France, Austria and Switzerland. Minister Maas called on neighbours Poland and Czech Republic to do the same.
I'm hoping that the border controls that the Polish and Czech friends currently do will also be lifted in the foreseeable future.
The European Commission recommends that EU's external borders remain closed for most travel, at least until mid-June. They want to avoid a second wave of CCP virus infections. British airline Virgin Atlantic says it may not resume flights until August. That's if Britain introduces a 14-day quarantine for international visitors. The airline is battling to stay afloat after they grounded passenger flights amid the pandemic. The company announced last week it would lay off almost a third of its workforce. British government ministers have said they plan to introduce quarantine for most international travellers in the coming weeks. And people in London are taking a new and healthier lifestyle. The UK's Association of Cycle Traders says they're witnessing a mini cycling boom. They estimate a record $73 million worth of bikes were bought last month.
For those who need to travel to work and keep social distancing, the bike has become very popular in London. Prime Minister Boris Johnson urged workers to avoid public transport if at all possible. That means many are looking for alternatives to busy buses, trains and London's underground metro system.
People are saying they haven't ridden a bike in 25 years, and they're getting old bikes out, they're buying new bikes, they're looking to commute to work instead of catching public transport. So it's kind of a renaissance of the bike, really, certainly in London.
Some are seeing the positives in the current situation.
Oh, it's just been a transformation. I liked biking, but I never was that into it. And I loved taking the subway. I'm a big public transportation person, but that's not an option right now. And it's just been great to get on the bike.
There are plans to transform parts of London city centre into what's claimed to be one of the largest car-free zones in any capital city in the world. The aim is to create more space for social distancing when walking and cycling.
That's all from us in the UK for today. Till next time, back to New York.
And still to come, autographed sneakers worn by basketball legend Michael Jordan exceeded expectations at auction. See how much they sold for after the break. pair of Nike sneakers from Michael Jordan's rookie season has sold in an online auction. The NBA great shoes fetched a record $560,000.
NBA legend Michael Jordan's first ever Air Jordan sneakers have fetched a record $560,000 in an online auction. Auction house Sotheby's said on Sunday the game-worn autographed sneakers from Jordan's rookie season were expected to sell for between $100,000 and $150,000. The auction coincided with the 35th anniversary of the Air Jordan brand and the screening of the 10-part ESPN documentary The Last Dance about Jordan's legendary run with the Chicago Bulls. Like most of Jordan's basketball shoes, the Air Jordan 1s, designed for him in 1985, are a mismatched pair in size 13 and 13.5. They were sold by collector Jordan Geller, the founder of the sneaker museum Shoeseum in Las Vegas. Sotheby's e-commerce director Bram Wachter said the record sale shows, quote, not only the incredible appeal of Michael Jordan, but also that sneaker collecting is truly a global and growing market. Known for selling multi-million-dollar art, Sotheby's held its first auction dedicated entirely to sneakers last year. It set a then world record sale of over $437,000 for a pair of 1972 Nike running shoes known as the Moon Shoe.
A ceramic studio in Brooklyn is getting creative with its business model under lockdown. It's providing potters with a way to stay centered through the crisis.
For 64-year-old Victoria Rosenblatt, making miniature pottery in her Brooklyn home is essential for her mental health in these uncertain times. Normally, Rosenblatt would be working on a regular 12-inch wheel at a local ceramic studio, but it's been shut since mid-March. And with the arts falling into the fourth and final phase of the state's reopening plan for the city, it remains unclear when the studio will be back in business.
I don't want to see it disappear. I'm still paying my dues. I'm still doing whatever I can to support them, hoping that they're going to be able to limp through until they can open again.
Pedro Ramirez is co-owner of Mouse Ceramic Studio.
A business that doesn't evolve in this time, I think will go extinct.
Mouse has 4 employees and recently received a PPP loan, but Ramirez says he must eventually pay most or all of it back. And if the studio, which is a gathering space for students and members, is forced to stay closed, debt will destroy the current business model.
It's like a trickle effect. If the bank wants their money, then our landlord wants his money, and we have to pay up even though we're not able to be open. And again, that's why we're moving to online learning, selling online kits, and various other creative ways to use clay and art materials at home.
Ramirez is now selling what he calls a quarantine kit, which includes a less than 2-inch wheel to make mini pots at home and handmade tools from chopsticks. He says the demand so far has outweighed his ability to stock it.
Tiniest spout.
36-year-old Heidi Wu bought her wheel off eBay in January and has since made dozens of tiny teapots.
I also made these little vases that say oof on them. So that's how I was feeling at the time.
People have told me that it saved their life. I'm not kidding. People have said, like, clay saved my life. People say clay's my therapy.
That's one reason Ramirez hopes his, quote, non-essential business will survive, even if the once bustling studio turns into a supplier of art materials.
That's the latest updates for now. Thank you for tuning in. Catch our evening updates at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time.